Today's episode is a great one because for a long time we've seen acrobatics, gymnastics, and these sorts of art forms brought into the studio environment. Sometimes they are delivered really well, and other times, they need improvement. They need more work, and sometimes it's really hard to find teachers who are qualified or have the skills and the safety knowledge around bringing, acro and gym and these sorts of art forms into our studio in a way that is engaging, but also is with safe practice. And I think those two go really hand in hand when it comes to this sort of art form. But that's why today I am joined by Peter Pearson, and we really are going to be talking about how to develop Acro-Ready teachers. Now, Peter Pearson is the founder, CEO of ACROTRIX and Ambitious Rewards. Peter trained as a gymnast for over 15 years. He graduated from the University of Nottingham with a master's degree in chemistry and entrepreneurship. Little bit astray from the acro world, but once you get chatting to him, which you'll get to meet him really soon, you'll see, he's a real expert in his field and he's so passionate about acro. Now, when he did graduate, he was studying and he founded and presided over the university's first ever gymnastics society. So that's pretty cool. And that was, in its 142-year history. Now it still exists today. So really leaving that legacy behind, and that's really invaluable what he's done there. Now, after graduating, he was successful in his role as a junior trader of commodities in London, responsible for contracts between global entities overseeing supply chain from end to end. He now is a serial entrepreneur with child development as his focus. So he's founded an internationally successful acro school and ran it for over 8 years. He touched the lives of many during this process. And during lockdown, he created the world's first online platform dedicated solely to anyone wishing to learn acro. And I use the word anyone. So that's what I found most interesting about this chat, how what he's created you can apply to anyone within your studio business or anyone that you acquire in your studio business if they have a passion and a want to learn acro. He believes it's possible through his courses and training. So this is really interesting, guys. So do keep tuning in because I think you're going to absolutely love this one. Now, Peter is concentrating on bringing out a school child development into focus through his new online platform, Ambitious Rewards. We touch on that a little bit, while continuing to scale ACROTRIX, which brings unique knowledge of acro to those without. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Peter Pearson, but first let's get into the intro. Hello and welcome to Studio Biz and All That Jazz. I'm your performing arts business coach and host, Josephine Lancuba. This show is designed to bring you inspiration, information, and the instruments you need to create and grow the studio biz of your dreams. I will bring you a mix of solo episodes as well as interviews where I tap into the minds of industry experts. My career started as a performer over 2 decades ago. I later became a speaker, theatrical producer, and talent manager, as well as having a successful teaching career in singing, drama, and dance. 10 years into my professional journey, I became a mama of 2, and with a baby on my hip, opened up my very own performing arts studio. From hardship and humble beginnings to 4 studio locations and a multi-6-figure performing arts biz, I know how to attract students and keep them coming back for more. And in the show, I will share with you my experiences to help you thrive and fast-track your path to success. I know you have a spark inside of you with dreams and goals for the future. As your coach and mentor, I'm here to help you step into your limelight and be a cheerleader in your ear each and every week. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk studio biz and all that jazz. Hello, Peter, all the way from London. So excited to have you here on Studio Biz and All That Jazz.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Peter, you are the owner of ACROTRIX and the founder of Ambitious Reward, and we're going to get to that later in the piece. But before we get into all of that fun stuff. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background, and are you an acrobat? Like, how did you come to this? Tell us a little bit about that.
Depends if you want the short or the long
You tell
version.
me. I like the interesting version.
The interesting version was I was a young person who would jump all over my mother's furniture
Mm,
and break things, and she had enough of it. So she said, "Right, I'm going to throw you into every sport and activity under the sun,"
mm,
of which gymnastics was one of them. And apparently, that's where I blew off all my steam and stopped breaking things in the house. Although, don't know. And yeah, I carried on with gymnastics for a long time. And uh, yeah, I mean, I'm skipping some bits out now, but then I went to university. I ended up at a gymnastics club there at the university as well. Then went off into the corporate life, should we say. Um,
mm.
and I always had gymnastics as kind of a thread in my life. I was always teaching or coaching or helping something or someone here, and then
Even when you
fell
were
into
working
even
corporate,
when
you
I was
still.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was still had about 4 jobs at one point. It was a bit crazy, but but yeah, I was in corporate life. I was a trader for a while, and I taught on some evenings and weekends in the gym. Um, and then I left that life and started my own gymnastics club, which was an acrobatic gymnastics club. Which, if people don't know much about gymnastics, there are very different disciplines within
Mm,
gymnastics. There are your standard artistic gymnastics, which everybody knows about, which you see on TV, which I grew up in, which is your bars, beam, rings, pommel, floor, all that
yeah.
jazz, Simone Biles,
Yeah.
and then there's other types of gymnastics. There's aerobic gymnastics, there's acrobatic gymnastics, there's trampoline gymnastics, there's
Mm,
all the different things. And I actually fell into teaching acrobatic gymnastics after artistic, and that has a lot of dance and forming elements. In fact, half the marks go towards how well you perform. Um, and yeah, I found love in it.
yeah.
To be honest, and they
Well, you'd
always
have to
say,
be passionate to be doing it as
yeah,
on the side of working full time and all of
yeah,
that. You're like, obviously, it's a love of yours. I mean, my daughter is she's only young, she's 8, and she does gymnastics and she
hmm
does competitive gymnastics. We've only just really, I mean, I'm the new gymnast mum. I have no idea about this space. I come from a dance, acting, and singing
hmm
background, but I find this whole
hmm
gymnastics acrobatic world to be completely foreign to me. And
hmm
it's really interesting, actually, that you say there is a difference between acrobatics and gymnastics. What is the core difference? Because I think a lot of people do see them as one and the same. What do you
So
define as the difference
it's
there?
there's huge overlaps. I going to be a bit controversial here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe there's a cartwheel's a cartwheel,
Mm,
um, and for instance, I fell into teaching. Acro has different terminologies in different spaces. So, as I said, in the gymnastics world, the word acro means acrobatic gymnastics, whereas in the performing arts world, acro pretty much sums up anything upside down, give or take. If you're doing a flip, you're doing acro. If you're
Love
doing
it.
a roll, you're doing acro,
So
right?
true. Yes.
Whereas in gymnastics, well, if you're doing acro, you're probably balancing on someone's hands. That's the difference.
Cool.
Think of Cirque du Soleil.
And if you're
Um,
doing cheer, you're throwing someone up in the air. That's right.
exactly. Whereas in dance, all of that is acro, every single part of it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
in terms of the difference between acrobatics and gymnastics, the main difference is freedom of expression. Acro, I would say, in performing arts world, is more of an expression, more of an art.
yeah.
Um, whereas gymnastics is very rigid, so it's very black and white, and they've done it that way so that it's easily scored. So you're doing this skill, you get this score. If you
Yeah, for
bend this
sure.
here, then you'll get this deduction, and it's very mathematical. That that lends itself to being able to score and compete quite easily.
Mm.
Um,
Were you
and
competitive
have
yourself as a
I
young
was,
person?
yeah,
Did you
I
compete?
was, yeah, yeah, I did. Really enjoyed it. But for the downsides to the rigidity of gymnastics is that you don't have that freedom of expression. You can't just vary a skill. You know, you can't take a walkover and say, actually, let's turn it around here and finish on our elbow here, and so on and so forth. Whereas in acro dance, you can. So there's
Amazing.
swings and roundabouts, I'd say.
Now, you've developed a community through ACROTRIX. I'd like to talk
Hmm.
about that because from what I can tell, it's a community where you train. Is that right? You train people
Hmm.
to become acro teachers. Is that
Yeah,
the core purpose?
yeah,
Like, what
yeah.
is the purpose of ACROTRIX, and how did that come about?
What is the purpose of ACROTRIX? That's a
Yeah,
great
like
question.
why did you
That's a great
start it?
question.
What was the
Why?
reason that led you to this?
I saw a huge gap in. I had a lot of knowledge. Um, you'll hear me say this up quite a few times, but I had a lot of knowledge of how to safely keep children, students, and adults going upside down,
Yes,
effectively. And it seemed like that part of the performing arts world was a bit of a wild west. Um,
totally.
I started um, I started teaching in performing arts school quite early on. Very well known performing arts school in London called Sylvia Young, um, and they, since sent out many celebrities worldwide. Um, and yeah, that was my first instance of realizing actually we need to make sure that these students are safe. We need to make sure that they understand what's happening here. And then I was doing workshops all over the UK and outside the UK as well, Germany and different parts of Europe. Just through sheer demand, I didn't realize how much demand there would be for the same skills that I was using prior to this,
Mm,
but actually I opened up a different door effectively, and people just really, really wanted it because it became quite popular through things like dance moms, and they were doing lots of acro on stage, and people realized actually this does add versatility to our performances. We do need these skills, but teachers were teaching what they thought they knew. You know,
yeah.
it
And
was a
it is a
case of.
wild west out there. You mentioned that. I mean, when you think about social media as well, like, Instagram,
Mhm,
whatever, TikTok videos, you've got people doing
all
crazy
sorts.
tricks. What's your take
Yeah.
on that? Because obviously, that is potentially sending a dangerous message to
Hmm.
young bodies and young,
Hmm.
emerging acrobatic people and
Yeah.
gymnasts and whatnot. So what's your thoughts around that?
I think social media is personally, I think social media is fantastic.
Mm.
The use of social media is a different story. I think that I love technology. I love all things tech. I love automating our lives, streamlining our lives. I love that side of things. However, people don't. It's an iceberg principle. People don't see the training that goes into the skill that gets put up for 4 seconds on Instagram. Right?
Mm.
They don't see the amount of falls, the amount of spotting, the amount of supervision, the steps that were taken, the conditioning behind it. They just see this amazing skill that happens on stage and say, you know what, I'm going to try it too.
Yeah,
Or
that's right.
worse, a teacher takes that 4 second clip and then goes into the studio and says, Katie, why don't you try this? Flips the iPad around, right? And then instead of actually breaking it down and saying, you know what, I would love for you to be able to do this next season or next semester or next term. Let's break it down. Let's start with X, Y, or Z, and then move forwards from there.
Mm.
That's what's missing. It's the
Yeah.
steps that are broken down. That's what we help teachers do, really.
So how does it work? Do you think is this an online program or in person? Like,
Mhm.
how do you actually communicate this teaching?
Um, Well, thanks to COVID, we had to jump online.
Mm.
Um, it's such a shame. We still see businesses within the space still closing down as of today.
Oh yeah, and that's the aftermath. And I truly
Yeah,
believe people underestimate the
100%.
damage that was caused during COVID. And some people they're still either in recovery mode or
Yep,
just didn't recover. I think
yep.
people assume, especially people who don't run a business or a small business, that is, oh, you're back to normal. Yay, you.
Haven't
Well,
got a clue.
yeah, no idea what the damage
Haven't got
happened.
a
Yeah.
clue. You're just like, you kind of look at them a little bit left, and you're like, really? Um, but yeah, we had to jump online, otherwise we wouldn't have survived. And weirdly, lockdown was a blessing for us because I made a lot of decisions, quick decisions, and I said, right, we're not going to succumb to this. We're going to change our offering, see what we can blend and put together, and go from there. And it worked out really well because putting the teacher training that we do online then gave it more accessibility, increased the accessibility and the access for teachers worldwide. We had teachers from all over the world starting to take our courses, as opposed to just the UK. And then that, lit up a bit of a light bulb in my brain to say, okay, what if we did persist with offering this everywhere? And yeah, since then we've had teachers from Canada, US, a few from Australia, not many, but a few, because of the time difference, jump onto our courses. And now we've just launched our courses to be on demand, so you don't have to be on our
Attend
courses at a
live.
particular
Yeah, and I
time,
love
so
that. I
time
think it's
zones.
really important for online course creators, which essentially is what you are now,
Hmm. Hmm.
to provide on demand. I just think, we live in such a busy world, and if we want to have
Yeah.
global appeal, that's so important. And it means that people from Australia can jump in. Now, in relation to the content, I guess you talked about safety being a really big component and how we're seeing really
Hmm.
dangerous behavior online. And you want to combat that. That was one of the reasons why you did this. You wanted to make sure that
Yep.
we're delivering quality, safe training.
Yep.
Do you do that? Like being online,
Hmm.
not to push the boundaries too far
Yep.
here, but I do want to know
Yep.
how can you guarantee safety? Is it a physical thing or is it
Yep.
theory only?
It's
Like
hilarious.
how can
I
you do
always
this?
have this conversation, not always, but I've had this conversation many times where it's more the teachers have a preference sometimes to say, oh, do you do any in person? I prefer to learn in person, actually, compared to the safety aspect. The safety aspect, unfortunately, is way back in their mind, compared to just their personal preferences to how they learn. But in terms of safety aspect, if you think about it, when picture yourself with a group of teachers, 15, 20 teachers, and you're in a hall or in a studio, and you're taking an acrobatics course. You've got a few mats and a few, bits of equipment, but realistically, for most of the time, for 99% of the time, you're working with your student or a couple of students that you've brought. There is no extra safety aspect being in person as to being online. Um, you're being taught the same thing. The main safety aspect that we really, what's the word? We
Encourage or
drill
push
home
for?
is the step-by-step nature of what we do. Break everything down.
Mm.
It's not build a cocoon of mats and wrap your students in cotton wool. It's no, break it down into steps.
And
They
are
have to
you
follow
providing
to learn.
them with information on proper
100%.
equipment and things like how
Yep.
to actually facilitate a safe
Yep.
environment?
Because people think safety equals mats, equipment, equipment,
Mm-hmm.
mats. That's what people think safety. Absolute nonsense. The safety comes in the teaching, not
Mm.
in, because the problem is you'll have a teacher who has two, three of these huge, massive crash mats that they've got in and think,
Yeah.
right, we're safe now. We can throw all the skills under the sun. We can throw that somersault. We can throw that trick. We can throw, because we have these mats. No, that's not safety. Safety is actually having a completely hard floor if you don't have these mats, and breaking the skill down one by one and doing it in time. doing it at the pace of the student, doing it at the knowledge level of the teacher. Safety is not throwing a crash mat at a student and saying, go for it. That's not safety. So we really pride ourselves on how we break things down.
I
So,
do find that really interesting. Like I said, my daughter does competitive gymnastics, and the centre she goes to is great. They're very good, but we have been to a few prior to that. And I do actually recall one of the, and I know gymnastics is different to acro, I totally get it, but but I do remember going to one centre, and like you said, they had all the mats, lots and lots of mats, and it felt like it was out of control. Like the kids were running right around the place. They'd have what they called like this 15-minute free time where kids could go on any of the equipment for 15 minutes and do whatever they wanted. They were climbing the rope, they were flipping over the thing, jumping off the trampoline into the foam pit. Like it was all just the lady that ran it, and she had a young assistant, and it was like, go be free for 15 minutes, everyone. And I do recall going in, because I'm a studio owner, I thought, this is a little bit mayhem, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is crazy town. I mean, I get that she wants them to have fun. So where's the balance there? Is there a balance? Can acrobatics be structured in a safe environment, but also be fun? How do you adopt that side of it? Because that's an important part of the teaching process. Yes, it's about the physical, but it's also about running a successful program that people want to come and book into, right?
100%. And that's where the freedom of expression comes in, and that's where the performing arts comes into play. You learn the foundations. You learn the foundations of the skills and the skill families and the skill groups and what it takes, the strength and the flexibility and agility that goes into these skills that you need as a base. And then the sky's the limit. That's when your imagination comes into play. And as a student, if you're an older student, you kind of know your own body, you know your strengths and weaknesses. If you're a younger student, you rely on the teacher to say, whoa, we're not ready for that yet. Let's pedal back a little bit and let's try this variation. In fact, let's try that variation, rather than you can or you can't. And that's the difference. It's like, okay, you want to try that new aerial. What about this type of the aerial? What about just tweak a little bit, and then in a month's time we can start thinking about that. And that's where the freedom of expression comes into play. And that's what we advocate.
Do you like the idea of representing your students in film, television, theatre, commercial, and more? Well, it's possible. You can increase your student retention, increase your revenue and industry credibility by becoming a talent manager. Now the wait is over, as my waitlist doors for Talent Manager Bootcamp are now open. This is the course designed to take you from studio owner to talent manager with ease and confidence, as I cheer you on and support you and mentor you each step of the way. To join the waitlist for Talent Manager Bootcamp, simply head to josephinelancuba.com/TMB or head to the link in the show notes.
Yeah, because you want it to be fun. I mean,
100%.
and you also want there to be a process where people can develop. So with the teaching side of things, do you find, because I find that interesting, because like I said, I don't come from an acrobatic or gymnast background. And to be honest, going upside down is not a fun time for me. I don't even, honestly, it's not. And I can't even do a cartwheel. That's real.
Oh, yes, you can.
No, I can't.
Yes, you
I'm not brave enough.
You're lying. I don't believe you.
It is true. Even as a kid, I could not do a cartwheel. And it's weird. I don't know. There's something about it. Every time I go upside down, I hesitate and I just stop myself. So it must be a fear thing. I'm not sure. But
I'll give you a free 1-to-1. And we'll get this. We'll get this going.
I love that. Peter's going to teach me how to do a cartwheel at 40.
Any of your viewers right now, if they're the same boat as you and they say they can't do a cartwheel, I'll get them doing a cartwheel in a week.
Okay,
that's a guarantee.
I'll do to that. But yeah, so what about studio owners like myself who would don't know much in that space, know a lot about the performing arts, but not in the gymnast or acro space. Is the program designed to support, like, does the studio owner have to be on board? Like, do they need to know it, or do you think that you can facilitate it just through team, or what's your thoughts around that? Like, what sort of clients are you seeing come through?
So, bit of a two-part answer to that question. Our program is designed for anyone. You don't need to know anything. And just to give you an idea of an example of that, during lockdown, we had a student who her mum put her on the online classes that we delivered for students, and the student did really well. I mean, she couldn't barely do a bridge when she started. Now she's doing front aerials and all these fantastic tricks. And we encourage parents to actually learn how to spot during lockdown, so that they're A, safe, B, supervised, and C, involved. And then the parent really enjoyed it, and she said, "Oh, do you think I could do a training course?" And we're like, "Of course you can do a training course." Fast forward a year, she's now part of our internal team. She's now part of the ACROTRIX team. Yeah,
that's crazy.
So to go from being a parent that knows diddly squat, and I mean nothing about acrobatics, to now being part of our core team, that just goes to show you what our training's like. She knew nothing, and now she's.
Do you do like an assessment process, or how do you?
No, we go straight in.
Someone has made it to teacherhood.
So yes, the actual assessment itself. Yes, we have a very thorough assessment process. So, just to kind of give you a very quick 30-second overview of what we do, we have our assistant courses, which are aimed at older students from 14 to 18 years, and they get certified to assist and in classes. Our level 1, level 2 courses, they have a robust assessment, whereby you learn all the theory in a day, and then you do a quick theory test at the end of the day, just to make sure everything's actually gone in, just to kind of refresh your memory. And then you get 4 to 8 weeks after that to practice with your students in your studio. Then you send in a video assessment, and we assess you on our, I think, 16 or 20 point criteria, and we'll let you know whether you've pass or fail. And if you fail, then we'll work with you to try and pass and resubmit your assessment.
There's a real assessment process going on here. So this isn't just one
real
of those
assessment,
courses
like,
and no ticking the boxes.
No,
that's cool.
No. I find that wild. I really find that wild.
What's your thoughts on that then? Because I would say most, I mean, I'm going to make an assumption here. Most studios that run an acro program don't necessarily have teachers that are trained specifically in acro. I mean, do you think that it's possible to learn acrobatics from, because, you know, there are studios that have really good dance programs that incorporate an acrobatic program, but they're not an acrobatic space. And I would say some of them do a great job. I mean, is that possible? Is it possible to learn acrobatics through dance and then develop that over time and then teach that?
So you're talking kind of learn through experience? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, you know, learning in a dance studio environment from someone who didn't necessarily do an acrobatics program or course, but they've learned from their studio, and then they're bringing in what they know, and the story continues.
If that was the case, there's so many different ways to take this, but if that was the case, firstly, in answer to your question, anything's possible. I'll start with that. Anything's possible. I would never ever sit here and say no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. In fact, I hate that. It grinds my gears when someone is like, oh no, this is the only way you can do this thing. That's the only, like, come on, like, relax. Okay.
Yeah.
However, what tends to happen in studios or gyms or schools where they're learning from an unqualified person is there'll be a small portion of their class that progress, and then there'll be a large portion that stay stagnant. And that is because that person knows or is strong in teaching things in a particular way. And therefore, if the students don't warm to that way of learning and their learning styles don't match the teaching style, then only a small portion will actually get anywhere in the class. Whereas if you're taught and you're qualified and certified to teach students in multiple different ways, then you use your experience that you've had before and also the new teaching methods that you're gaining. And then you'll have 80 to 90% of the class progressing very quickly, if not 100% of the class progressing at the same rate or accelerating their progress further. So that is a result, and I've seen it happen.
I find that really interesting, actually, because, you know, there is a difference in any art form, even like, you know, with performing arts, for example, right? Just because you can sing, for example, doesn't mean you can teach singing.
Nope,
and
absolutely not.
I have found that as someone who hires teachers, I have found there's a really, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but now I've got it down. And just because someone is a performer and a brilliant artist doesn't make them a teacher.
No.
And like you said, with that woman who'd never done, who wasn't, you know, an acrobatic person, what do you call an acrobat? That's what you call them. Who wasn't an acrobat prior, but then learnt the skill of teaching the art form.
Oh, 100%.
Then they were able to do it. And I actually do think that there's something in that, because we really need to be hiring, as studio owners, we need to be hiring teachers first. Performers are great, and that is like icing on the cake. Like if you hire an acrobat who is an amazing teacher and has had a great competitive career or whatever, or was an Olympian, that's amazing. That's the cream on top. But it is more important that they are a teacher first. And so,
100%.
yes, I think that's actually a really good point, that we need to be helping our staff and team in the art of teaching, not just the art form itself, because that is where the key is to a successful class. And that's where the enjoyment comes from, because then you are not leaving people behind. Like you mentioned that, you know, a portion of the class will accelerate and then the majority won't. And that does come from someone not being an experienced or knowledgeable teacher. 100%. Because the people that have natural ability and skill, you know, there's always that 5% that just love it. They've got it. They're born flexible, all the bits, right? And then the rest aren't. They need to be trained and shown.
They need to be taught. And you know, it's crazy. I think just to add on to that, sometimes, not all the time, and I'm sure you're aware of this, sometimes those amazing performers that have all the credits and all the, I've done this competition, I've done this showcase, and I've been here and I've been on this, they come with ego.
Oh, big time.
The ego comes through the door as well, and you're like, I wish I kind of left that little bit out, you know.
I think those sorts of performer type teachers are great for once-off masterclasses and workshops, for fun experience. Wow, we've got a celebrity in our midst, or we've got a rock star, we've got someone who's amazing and is, you know, the Olympian. That's cool, and it's a cool factor, and people enjoy the once-off. But for ongoing programming, it ends up falling flat. And by the end of it, people don't actually care if you've won an Olympic medal, especially when you're sending a kid somewhere, because at the end of the day, I just want my kid, this is how I feel about my daughter, I just want her to have a good time. I want her to learn something. I want to see that, especially because gymnastics is one of the most, in Australia, one of the most expensive sports to do. It's more expensive than dance. It's more expensive than anything. It's expensive sport. And I'm okay with that if she's getting skills. Like, I want to see that she's actually improving. When I go to her competition, it's not about being a bloody, what do you call it, a gymnastics mum, a dance mum. It's not about that. It's about, we're investing so much time too, because to become competitive, and you'd know this, you're a competitive gymnast, it's a lot of hours required. Like,
it is a lot of hours.
Oh my God. This kid is 8 and she's already in the gym. God, what is it? 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 4. What's that? I don't know.
Probably.
9.5 hours. And that's not even how, like, there are kids in there doing like what they called silver level and all this stuff. They were there
They
for
sleep in
11,
it.
12, 14 hours.
Yeah,
Unbelievable,
yeah.
you know,
They
and
bring their
that's why it's
sleeping
expensive.
bags. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's why I think as long as I want to see some result for that. Like, she's got to be
Mm,
improving. She's got to be enjoying it.
mm.
So yeah, so that really is an important part of the puzzle. I mean, what's your thought around that? All these hours, how does that impact a young body? Like, what's your thoughts around that?
Um, as long as they're as long, again, it comes back to the teaching, right? It comes back to the same. We're gonna definitely come back to the same point over and over again. It comes back to teaching. If you're doing 16 hours of training, 20 hours of training, even 40 hours of training, and there's no injury prevention training in there, there's no long stretching sessions, there's no rolling out, there's no um, physical therapy, then there's a problem. There's a
Mm,
clear problem. You know, there's an issue there. Um, I do believe that children are way more resilient than um, people realize. Um, I think it's really good for children to pick an activity, a sport, an activity, an interest, and go deep, um, as opposed to doing 15 different things and doing each of them for an hour a week. Um, I really
Jack of all
believe
trades, master of
in,
none. Is that the
yeah,
one?
100%, 100%. I believe it's so rewarding and so important for later life, for them to go deep on, whether it's dance or gymnastics or swimming or whatever it is, because then that teaches them so many different skills for later life, commitment, and I could go into this for a
Yeah,
very
no,
long
it's
time,
great. You're
but
obviously very, very passionate. Did
100%.
you continue gymnastics yourself into your adult years, or when did you stop?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bit of competing at university level. I mean, not at the same level as the universities in US. I mean, they're highly competitive. But we did a little bit of competitive university gymnastics, and then carried on kind of doing a little bit of training in adult sessions, fun adult sessions afterwards, until when was it? Last, let me get it right, 2022, around about the end of June, I snapped my Achilles last year. Yeah, teaching, and I was like, I'm done. My body is telling me that now is the
Can I ask
time.
how old you are, Peter? Does that bother you?
How old do you think I am?
Oh my God, I don't know. This is so hard now. You put me on the spot. I'm 40, so I don't care. But I don't know, you've been in your 30s or something?
Yeah, I'm 37.
Yeah, cool, right? So we're about the same
Yeah,
age. So yeah, you're gonna snap something for sure.
yeah, something's gonna snap. I mean, I've done various injuries beforehand, when I was younger, but yeah,
30
this was
years
like,
of tipping upside down has got to do something, right? Oh, look, it happens. We get injuries in dance classes. I mean,
yeah.
life happens, right? So
Can I also go back to something quickly?
yeah,
You were talking about performers not being the greatest teachers and so on and so forth.
sometimes, yeah,
Do you know
most of
what?
the time.
Yeah, most of the time. Oh, you know what's crazy? The amount of people that ask us, so many teachers that want to do our courses say, but I can't do any acrobatic skills. I can't do it. Does that mean I can't take the course? And that makes me think, is there an industry standard that requires the teacher to be able to do the things that they teach? Because if that's the case, that's ridiculous. I must find the question itself crazy. Do you think that Simone Biles' teacher can do everything that Simone Biles did? Do you think that Michael Phelps' coach could do everything that Michael Phelps did? Do you think that Usain Bolt's coach can do everything that Usain Bolt can do?
Mm.
No. Like, I just find it utterly insane that there is an expectation to have to be able to do. It's almost an ego thing. I must be able to do everything that my student's doing or better. No,
Yeah,
not at
that's an
all.
interesting
Your student
point.
should be better
I
than
think
you.
people want to have the ability to demonstrate, right? So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess, but in that sense, I mean, I actually, if I think about my daughter's center, they definitely are not demonstrating. they're just
Don't need
talking
to.
it through and showing through arm movements and explanation.
Yeah.
And then once they're there, they'll hold their body into position.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
sort of thing. But if I think
Talk
about
it
it, they're never swinging around the bars. I've never seen one coach at the gymnast center swinging around the bars. Not once, ever, actually, if I think about it. Yeah, you're
It
right.
would hurt. That's why they're done with it.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? And some of them are quite mature aged. I mean, very mature age. Others are really super young. So there's a big variety of coaches. But no, you're absolutely right. And that's a good point. So what, if you snap your Achilles or whatever, does that mean your career as a teacher is over? Of course not.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of, age prior, we were talking about, young people and whatnot. What sort of age do you recommend in relation to getting started as a teacher or coach in this space? Like, when is a good time to start? Like, what's the youngest you've taken on board, for example?
As early as physically possible. Because two reasons. When you start to teach, your training gets better because you start becoming self-aware. If you're 14 years old and you're still training in dance, performing arts, gymnastics, acrobatics, and you start teaching someone else, and you say, "Oh no, it needs to be like, oh no, make sure you're elevated here, make sure your spine is," and you start to say these things, you start to believe what you're teaching, and then therefore, when you go back into the studio, subconsciously or consciously, you start thinking, "Oh wait, I need to tuck my tailbone under. Oh, my knee was a little bent there." It is like a light bulb going off. So the more teachers you have at a younger age, the better students they will be. That's a fact.
And you take people as young as 14 into ACROTRIX, is that correct?
Yeah, we have an assistant acro course. 14 years old, and then they can certified to assist a qualified level 1 qualified teacher in class.
Okay, so there's a progression as well, which is great because, assistant coaching would make sense, especially for a young person. Before we come to the end of this interview, and I've loved having a chat about this and opening up my eyes and to the world of acrobatics. I absolutely love that. And hopefully the studio owners listening at home or on their walk or in the car, are open-minded to that too, because I know a lot of people want to introduce acrobatics into their studio space, but they don't know where to start. But yeah, I'd love to ask you, what does success mean or look like to you? What does success mean to you?
In terms of me personally, or
what does it mean for you?
It means impact. It means it may sound like a bit of an egotistical answer, but I want to impact as many lives as I physically can, and also get paid for doing it. But I would like to impact as many lives as possible. I have no real interest in fame. I think a lot of problems come with fame and being at the forefront of everything. And to be honest, a lot of my team say, "Peter, you need to get out there. I mean, people need to know it's you that is doing ACROTRIX. Like, I'm always in the background, in the shadows, because I just want to perpetuate how good the team is and what they're doing, and really showcase them. But success is definitely impact for me. If there's a million people that are, doing what we're offering, happy days. That means
so that impact is what
Yeah.
success is to you. I love that. Who or what inspires you, Peter?
Who or what inspires me? Some family members actually inspire me. I think, oh man, have you read or heard of The Alchemist?
Yes, I have heard of it, but I've not read it.
Yeah, that I can't put into words what that book has done for me, but
The Alchemist, I'll have to read that. I'm writing it down. Thanks, Peter.
anything which understands the idea of energy,
Mm.
in both a scientific and spiritual way, because actually they're kind of interlinked, because energy is just vibration. And you can go into the
Are
I'm
you a
very
little
much a
bit woo,
scientist.
Peter, or totally woo? Do you know what woo means?
Yeah. No, so I studied chemistry. I'm a scientist at heart. Physics, chemistry, that was my bag. I
Mm.
loved all things scientific, but my mother, she practices Reiki and does crystal healing, and she talks about vibrations, and then I go back into my science knowledge, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. That they're very similar. They're talking about vibrations. Physics, all of our bridges and everything is built on the knowledge of everything have its own vibration, which is why bridges collapse if everyone jumps on it at the same time. Anyway, but yeah, coming back to the original question, I think energy, just knowing things about people and understanding people's energies. There is no particular one person that inspires me. As I said, there's family members that do inspire me. But creativity, all things creative.
Mm.
I can walk around the gallery for hours. I can listen to different types of music. I mean, my music taste is very eclectic. It's from classical to Drake to this to that to anything. You know, just watching art on the watching like flowers bloom on Instagram. There's like these these crazy profiles where they'll do a time lapse on a flower
Oh yeah,
blooming
I know the
over a
ones you mean.
period of like
Yeah, amazing.
I'll sit and watch that for ages. So
Sit and watch that
anything,
flower bloom. I love
oh my
that.
god, anything creative
Yeah, that's beautiful.
is a huge
And
inspiration to me.
I love that so much. And I think that's really interesting that you've come from a science background and your mum is into the spiritual side, but you found that link of energy, which is really interesting. So tell me, Peter, what's next? What's coming up for you, and what can we expect to see?
We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when you were, what was it we were talking about?
At the very beginning,
Going
I
deep.
think I mentioned something about ambitious reward. I
Yeah.
don't know if I said it before we hit record, but I was curious about that.
Yeah. And just towards the end, middle to the end, we were talking about children and doing different activities and going deep on something, and that is basically, that thought pattern has inspired me to create Ambitious Rewards, which is a different company separate to ACROTRIX, and it's software for dance teachers, swimming instructors, gymnastics teachers to help incentivize their students and help them provide goal setting and a whole heap of other amazing benefits that really help studio owners, because for years, and I do mean years, I came up with multiple ways to incentivize the kids. I would have star charts. I would come out with Amazon vouchers. I would say we're going to do this at the end of term if everybody does, like, the most creative ways to inspire them and to help them step by step and reward them for little bits. Because in dance and gymnastics, you train, then you might have a competition, and then you train, then you might have a meet, then train, then you might have a showcase, and in between, there's no real like recognition of the effort you're putting in, apart from maybe a pat on the back, and then the kid jumps in the car and the mum says, "How was dance?" and they're like, "Oh, okay."
And then sort
Whereas,
of on to the next, right? I think in
it's
this
just
society, we are always on to the next. And I actually
100%.
teach this to my coaching clients. Like when I put together, we do annual project planners, and each month we're like, okay, so what's the goal for each month of this upcoming year? And then I actually put one column is reward, because I'm like, okay, so what are you going to reward yourself with if you achieve that goal for January? It can be anything. It doesn't have to be, a trip to Hawaii. It can just be, going out for dinner to a seafood restaurant, or it can be, I'm going to buy that bottle of wine that I've been looking at, or, whatever.
Exactly.
But just having a rewards process is so important, because we are in the age of boom, boom, boom. Oh, I did that. What's next?
Instant
I do it
gratification.
too, by the way. I do it too. I'm like, I've achieved some amazing things. And then I'll go, oh, great. Now I've got to do that. And I'll have to stop myself, go, whoa, 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 whoa. Just sit in this for a minute,
Take stock. Yeah.
Yeah. So 100%. Teaching our kids that, especially in today's day and age where it's so driven by what's next, what's next, do the next thing. So how do you do that in an app? How do you incent? I don't quite understand how that works.
I'll give you the crux of it very quickly, 20 seconds or less. Effectively, you're an owner. You still teach?
I do occasionally, but not as much these days.
But if
I coach my business owners, but yeah.
So you have your studio teachers, and they have their groups, and there's different criteria that they can reward their students for. So they're giving them points for different things. They can give them points for their actual core skills in class. They can give them points for effort. They can give them points for organization. They can give them points for leadership. They can give them points for welfare. They can give them points for teamwork. And then these points start to accrue in the child's account, which is the parent's account, which the child sees.
And they have access to this app, the actual student or the family?
The student will go through their parent's login. So only the parent can log in. Not the student can't run in there and do whatever. The student has to go through their parent. And then over time, these points start to build up. And we're actually in the midst of onboarding brands and retailers onto the platform, so that these points can turn into discounts with brands and retailers. So eventually they'll be able to get these points and start to get discounts off some dancewear and bits and bobs. And then also, as I said, there's goal setting. Teachers will be able to set, hey, Katie, I want you to think about your point for next week, or I want you to think about this for next week, and then they can mark them down as whether it's in progress or whether it's complete, and you can effectively track progress step by step for every one of these students in the entire studio. So, and you get overviews and all sorts of things. So
that's really cool.
There's a lot going on.
Can they personalize it, and can teachers have their own rewards in there, like not just from big companies, but have their own system as well?
Yeah. So you can, so the student,
I don't know, you get a merch pack from the studio or something like, or you get a lolly bag next time you're in, whatever.
Studios can be their own vendors on there as well. So
I love that. That's so fun. Okay, so where can people find you if they want to check out what you do?
I'm very vocal on LinkedIn. So they can find me on LinkedIn, Peter Pearson, MSc, and also Facebook, as most people are on Facebook as well. As
ACROTRIX, or?
So ACROTRIX is ACROTRIX everywhere, ACROTRIX.
Yeah, and we'll pop a link in the show notes for everyone as well that are interested. So
LinkedIn,
they can check
Instagram,
that out.
Yeah.
All right, rock and roll. Thank you, Peter. That was amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Coming on the show. And I wish you the very best of luck with your most recent endeavor in Ambitious Rewards, and of course, with your much loved ACROTRIX. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
This episode was brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Studio Biz Success, an amazing and accessible online educational platform for performing arts studio owners designed to help you grow your business with confidence and get your results. Check it out at josephinelancuba.com, along with other great industry resources to help you leap into the studio biz you deserve. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. You can tag me on social media at Josephine Lancuba and give it a review. Your support helps the show to grow so I can continue to provide you with useful, informative content. I'm Josephine Lancuba, your biggest cheerleader. Thanks for listening, and shine bright.